Hello, everyone, and welcome to an episode of Paranormal Awakening. We are here joined by a guest of the show about a crazy encounter. Buckle up, it's about to get crazy. Alright, guys, we are about to begin. Alright, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Alright, awesome. Great, the audio is going through, so I think we are loud and clear. So,
All right.
we're here joined by a member of our Discord. Speaking of which, the Discord is linked down below in the bio, as always. He is one of our first guests on the show that's not an exact member, but he is a guest on the show. So if you want, you can go ahead and introduce yourself and kind of go ahead and tell us your story of, what you were telling me about your girlfriend's encounters. So,
Yeah, thanks, Scott. So my username in the server is Menacing Sundere. My name's Noah, and so my girlfriend has a story from when she was younger, camping with her dad and sister. They were in the woods in rural Washington State, and they had gone to a out off the road kind of campsite that wasn't used much. When they got there, the campsites leading out to that area were all empty, and the one they got to was really rural. And so they got there their first day and were setting up camp, doing everything, and everything was pretty normal up until the evening when it started getting darker. And they had a campfire set up and were all sitting around it when suddenly the forest had gone totally silent. All the bugs stopped, the birds, just everything, just dead silent. And they all got kind of a feeling of dread kind of swept over the campsite. They didn't say anything for the short bit. And finally, she was about 10 at the time, said something to her dad, like, "What's that? Do you feel that?" And he asked them if they had felt it too. Uh, so after they had all acknowledged that something was going on, they kind of noticed that they felt so like something was watching them or something was nearby in the forest. They were in a small clearing at the time, but they were close enough to it that it was pretty close. If there was something walking in the brush, you would hear it. So
was it kind of
they
like a
sat and they
was it
what?
kind of like a snaps branching or
I don't think they
breaking?
heard anything at first, like because at first it had just gone totally silent, like as if something came into the area that scared all the other wildlife or something. But it was after they had kind of been paying attention to it that they started noticing. The whole encounter here lasted about 30 minutes, but what they noticed was just unnatural things like a bad smell in the air, kind of something that would be associated with like a skunk ape or a Wendigo or skinwalker. But besides that, they didn't end up seeing or hearing anything too out of the ordinary at the time. And finally, after, like I said, 30 minutes or so, the sound kind of returned, and it's almost as if everything was back to normal.
Huh. That's
And
that's very interesting.
yeah, and then they had spent the rest of the waking night, at least, not seeing or hearing anything else. They had been on alert. Her dad was holding his gun, and they were ready for something. I think they had called out into the woods a few times, just, "Hey, is anyone there? If you're there, come out, or stop screwing with it."
Huh, that's
But yeah.
that's
So it
crazy.
was something weird. You're deep in the woods like that. You never know if you're just running into some weird hermit who lives in the woods and he's checking you out. But they weren't scared enough to leave at that point, because really nothing happened aside it getting quiet and things getting. But what it got really got strange is after they went to bed. They had their own separate tents. So Dad was in his tent, little like maybe 6 8 feet away from them, and I think they were sharing a tent. Uh, so after falling asleep at whatever time, she wakes up and kind of woke up, just not like alerted, just kind of woke up, almost as if there was just like people waking up in the camp, and she heard pacing kind of back and forth, and she saw a shadow outside the tent as the campfire was still going, and When she saw the shadow, it looked to be at least in the right human proportions, and it was close to her dad's height, which is on the shorter side, maybe like 5'6".
So
At least
she
that's what it
actually
seemed from
saw
the laying
this.
position. Yeah, through the tent, like you know how like if you're laying in a tent, you see the fire, and anything between it's going to cast a big shadow.
Yeah, yeah,
Like you could
yeah.
see like a full silhouette. And so she was looking at it and confused, but her dad suffers from pain issues. So sometimes he would just get up and just kind of not be able to sleep and just, walk it off until he felt better. So she didn't say anything and didn't feel the need to bother him because she figured if he was in pain or something, then going out there and bugging him wouldn't be the best idea. So she watched this, just kind of pacing back and forth, not really doing anything, not looking into things, just walking. And this went on for what assumed to be several hours, at least until the sun started coming up. So assuming she woke up at like 2 a.m. It was until 5 or 6.
Hmm.
But it didn't make a sound. It didn't try to get into any of the tents, and it just kept walking. And the next day, she eventually fell asleep after it disappeared. It disappeared once the sun started coming up. It kept walking like it was, except it changed its path and started walking directly into the woods, just a straight path. And then that was it.
So
Maybe 20 minutes after that, she fell asleep.
so she saw it disappear.
Yes. Well, at least saw it. Basically, the way the camps was set up, you could hear it walking around the campsite just because I'm assuming leaves or just the grass, the dirt, and heard it and saw it disappear out of the shadow's view and heard it walking into the distance.
Huh. That's very crazy. And for any of our viewers, that are listening to this recorded podcast out there, if you guys have any encounters like this, let us know because this is very crazy. Experience that these people do experience from time to time. I know I've experienced some things as well in the forest of my own, but nothing like this, which is very strange. And at least this creature that was sort of checking in on them, weren't very disruptive or, I guess, attacking. It didn't attack them, so that's a good news at least.
Yeah. And then the next morning was strange, is when she woke up. I think things were pretty much the same in the campsite. Maybe a few things were overturned or nudged slightly, but otherwise it didn't do much. But when she asked her dad about it the next day, she says, like, hey, I saw you pacing around last night. Was your pain really bad? Or, were you not able to sleep? And he says, what are you talking about? I didn't leave my tent the whole night. And he said, and it went on to explain it. No, I saw you walking back and forth. I was awake. I was watching you do it. And that kind of spooked him. And he assumed she was lying, but she was adamant about it and said, no, like, I can show you. You were walking back and forth, and there was a path. Like, there was like a small rut from where it was just pacing back and forth. So it was physically there, physically walking, whatever it was.
Did she have her
And
phone on her, or was she recording
no,
it?
this was years ago. Uh, in fact, that would have been almost 20 years ago.
Huh, that's really crazy. It was 20 years ago because if we put it into perspective, like nowadays anyone can record anything or
Oh, right.
but
If you're staying up late, you're going to be on your iPhone or your tablet or.
yeah. But 20 years ago, there's barely even an iPhone. There's what, an iPhone 1?
Uh, I think that was even before the first one. I mean, we had cell phones then, but they were not. I
They
think that
weren't
was
as
before we
good
had
as they
any like
are.
full-on smartphones. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I think that's a
But
really interesting story and
yeah. Well, it makes me wonder how much different it would be if we could see something like that ourselves rather than just hearing about someone's subjective experience. Because when a 10-year-old has this kind of experience, you have to wonder, well, did they have the right height and proportion? Was this a much bigger person, or, were they just half asleep? Were they so scared that the memory almost alters itself?
well, yeah,
But
because
but it wasn't a scary experience like that where she didn't even know she was potentially in danger.
yeah,
Yeah.
because I've had experiences where I think I hear someone that's my family member, but it's really not. Because like
Right.
I had an experience where someone was like, "Hey, can you come outside?" And so I go outside. No one's freaking there at the house. Like what? But another thing is I had this one really it was It was actually at night, back when I used to play a lot of video games, like almost
Hmm.
24/7, and it was actually getting to that point where I was actually seeing people that I like knew, but they weren't there, which was weird.
Right, just from staying up so late and like the exhaustion.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think that based on her perspective, I don't think that was the case for her because whether it was a skinwalker, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, maybe even an alien gray being,
Mhm.
whatever she saw, man, that must be weird. Like
Yeah,
considering was it the same height as her dad?
that's what she assumed it was. She didn't stand up in her tent, but like just from looking up, it didn't seem to be much bigger than a person.
Well, that's very weird. That's
Yeah. Well, and
yeah.
then the next morning, after they had discovered like the rut in the ground, and like Dad was convinced that they actually saw something, uh, they had like followed the path, like or they followed the direction to the woods, where you could see a bit of like the grass being displaced, but once it reached like the forest line, it just stopped. Like there was no sign of anything.
So that trail kind of cut off at the line of the forest.
Yeah, I think they made it like a few feet into the forest, and then it just was gone. Now, whether that was because it disappeared or because the forest is just gets disrupted more and it's just harder to find tracks, I don't know.
Well, yeah, that's those are two things that would probably require an on-ground investigation in the future, possibly,
Right.
or whatever the case is. Maybe an investigation team that may be out in that area at the time. It'd be kind of cool if we could investigate that on-ground location. Maybe see if we can, find some sort of technology too, because maybe it left something behind that maybe they didn't really pick up or see. Maybe or maybe not.
Well, and maybe it's almost trying to keep you out of the forest.
Or that too.
So
Maybe.
the fact that it didn't do anything. If it was anything, there was a sleeping adult and then two children. It could have really done whatever it wanted.
But maybe it was rather just checking in on them, making sure, because there are some animals that are like really protective of territory. So like I have two dogs, and
Right.
they're really territorial. Like if any other dog comes in, and they'll be like, "Oh, you son of a gun." But
Well, yeah, and then they want to see if there's any danger going on there too.
yeah, yeah, and it's kind of like the same thing for. So we have like a little forest in the backyard, and I got really bored one day, so I just studied a bunch of birds and studied their movements, and it's kind of like, if you see a person walking by, they'll chirp and they'll alert their buddies, and so maybe that's what that creature or being was doing. Was maybe it was just checking things out, scouting things around, and seeing, oh, there isn't really any danger. I'm just gonna go walk off and go do whatever.
Well, it's really interesting that you bring up that option because like the land was either owned or ran by a Native American guy who lived up there.
That could be another theory behind what she actually saw, uh, but maybe it was a person, maybe it was a skinwalker, maybe it was a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch, but I'm very convinced though that it would be a skinwalker because what time was it at? It was at 3 in the morning.
It had to have been in the middle of the night, and she had to have laid there not too long, but enough that she got some sleep. So I would say she probably woke up between like 2 and 4
Yeah,
at
well
least,
that's
the mid close to the midnight hour, 0 hour.
yeah, that's pretty odd because like I wouldn't picture myself. Hey, I'm gonna go walk out there at 3 in the morning.
Well, exactly. Like even if you were some crazy guy living in the woods, there was no light. It wasn't holding a light. It was pitch black in the rural woods. So the guy would have had to have found their campsite just by seeing the fire and navigated his way all the way there, and then just left on his own.
Yeah,
It just seems very unlikely. And the next day they did check, and there was no other people parked nearby. And in this area, there was nowhere you were parking if it wasn't one of the designated camping parking lots, because there's just nowhere to pull over,
yeah, that would be
at least without your car just being visible. But
I mean, unless he rammed his car into the forest, which I doubt that would be possible or even safe to
right.
do. Hey, I'm gonna go drive my car into the forest. Yeah, perfectly makes sense. But I still think this story is crazy, shocking. Even if it's experienced nowadays with anything, anyone can pull out their phone and film
Mhm.
it. But also, nowadays versus 20 years ago. Nowadays, a lot of people fake things with CGI and all that stuff. So
Well,
for
right, the technology is there that they can just they can make almost anything happen if they're dedicated.
yeah, exactly. Like there's that guy called Mosa Brown or something like that on TikTok, and he makes like I'm not sure if it's true, but he claims he's from 2027, living in our world. But
Oh, right, he's one of the. Okay, I may have heard of him. I've seen a few of
yeah,
those like claim time travelers on YouTube.
yeah, but it's like at the same time they always end up coming out and saying, "Oh, this was a hoax."
Yeah.
But at the same time, I really don't know whether to believe that or the
Well, like it all goes back to that John Titor, like
I
the first guy who claimed to come back from the future, and a bunch of stuff he claimed was proven false, but he was kind of the catalyst for that whole topic coming out.
yeah.
But I mean, either way, like it would help a lot if more people with those same kind of experiences would come out of the woodwork and actually talk about it, because so many people are afraid of just being like laughed at and called crazy or just not believed in general.
Yeah. Well, as far as the time traveling goes, I think Noah was one of the most interesting ones because he was so believable up until he came out recently, like maybe about a month ago, and he said that he was oh, looks like we got Carson waiting in. I can bring
Oh,
Carson into. He's hey Carson, what's up? Can you hear me?
What's up, guys?
Yeah,
hey,
Carson,
welcome,
this is
Carson.
menacing Sandra, aka Noah. We are recording the podcast right now. Carson, if you want to introduce yourself to the podcast once again for those viewers that may not know.
Yeah, hello everybody. My name is Carson French. I am a paranormal researcher from California, and you may have seen me on the TV show Scientific Researchers of the Unknown.
Yeah, so
Very cool.
Carson, menacing Sandra over here was
You can
explaining
just
to
call me
me.
Noah.
All right, Noah over here was explaining to me his story on the on his encounter or his girlfriend's encounter with a skinwalker or some potential being that was out in the forest, or maybe it was even a native uh, person walking around. But uh, yeah, it's a really crazy encounter that I think uh, that could have happened. And uh, so Carson, if you want to, or not Carson, Noah, if you want to kind of explain to Carson a little bit of just like a summary of what you explained to
Yeah,
me.
yeah, yeah. So she was like 10. She went with her dad and sister camping, and when they got there, the one night they were there, the forest went silent, and that very same night she woke up between like midnight and 2 a.m. or so, and heard and saw someone walking around the campsite, just pacing back and forth. And the next day, she thought it was her dad. Next day, asked him about it, and it turned out it wasn't him. They did notice there was actually a path in the ground from somebody walking, and investigated it and didn't really find anything.
So, wait,
But
where was this again?
this was in like rural Washington state, like North Washington.
Interesting. Yeah, I've heard a lot of similar stories of people camping and hearing things outside their tent at night.
What was
Yeah,
so interesting though is like the fire was still going in the campsite, and like she saw a silhouette that looked pretty much human. It had, two legs, two arms, and a head.
Hmm. So what makes you think it was or what makes her think it was a skinwalker?
So it was so far in the middle of nowhere that there was no other people camping in that area. Like if you looked at all the other campsites, like leading up to there, there's no cars parked in any of them, and they went to pretty much the most rural one. The very next day, there was no other cars there, and no one lived out there. So the fact that if it was a person, it was some homeless guy who lives in the middle of the woods, and there was no sign of any people living nearby.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
and considering it was right in between the tent and the campfire,
Yeah,
which is
yeah, it was specifically pacing outside of their tent, the kids' tent.
Hmm.
yeah, that's
So, Was it just that one night, or were there other occurrences?
There was something that happened the next day that prompted them to leave, but I cannot remember it off the top of my head. But it wasn't anything like that,
Maybe
where they
we
actually
Okay.
saw
maybe we could
something.
do a part 2 podcast as well. Maybe sometime later this month or some.
Yeah, absolutely.
What else are we gonna talk about, or is there anything that you guys want to cover?
Um, do you mean like aside from the government thing?
Yeah, yeah. Or if there is anything
Um,
that like you guys just wanna.
well, how about that new UFO video that dropped?
Which one?
It
Uh,
was it, it was like
the radar
swarming.
footage.
Oh yeah, that
Yeah, they were like
radar one. That
swarming a
was
ship.
that was really weird,
Yeah.
man. Like
I find it really interesting. I don't know much about this Jeremy Corbell. Is that his name?
Jeremy
Yeah.
Corbell. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't know much about this guy, but whoever his source, he definitely has a really good inside source because he's getting all these leaked videos. And
Well, I think they're intentionally being leaked.
Yeah.
right, but it's interesting how immediately the mainstream media is reporting on these videos specifically because UFO videos and stories have been told for years, but nobody's really reported on it. So I just find it really interesting how
Well, and when they do, when they
this
do
guy's
report
video.
on it, they paint them as weirdos. They never take it
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
valid.
So why are this guy's videos um being taken so seriously all of a sudden, and why also the Pentagon themselves have commented on the videos confirming that they're real, and
Yeah.
so why all of a sudden is this happening now? I think it's maybe because of the bill about UFO disclosure on by June 1st. I think they're sort of trying to prepare people if they are going to drop some information, but I do think it's very weird how it's just this one guy who everybody's taking seriously, and everybody
Yeah.
else who reports on UFOs is painted as like a joke.
I, I
Yeah.
suspect he's some kind of government employee that's being paid, just he doesn't even have to be like some CIA dude. He could just be some government guy. And I think they're just trying to do a controlled leak where they are going to leak everything that they are comfortable with the public seeing. But anything that goes outside of what they're comfortable with isn't going to get the media coverage, isn't going to be released by this guy, isn't going to be taken as seriously.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, well,
definitely. I agree with that because you know, it, considering Jeremy Corbell, he just like somehow everyone just now knows about Jeremy Corbell. It's a little bit weird how like
Yeah,
it,
out of the
it
woodwork.
well, I already knew about him before because of his work with Bob Lazar.
Yeah.
yeah, but
But
he was
other
like
than that,
lightly known then, but he wasn't as known as he is now. Like
Well, he became more of a public figure after going on Joe Rogan's podcast. He
yeah.
did some things in Las Vegas where I don't know if that's where he's from, but that's where he worked for a long time, and that's when he got kind of like pushed out of the public field more.
Oh yeah, well, if you're
But
working in Las Vegas, there's definitely a lot of government. You know about Janet Airlines, which is the
oh
airline
yeah,
that
they take
takes.
people to Area
Yep,
51.
dude, I
Yep.
love seeing those airplanes. So freaking cool. And it's
Yeah,
like,
they're cool.
yeah, and then it's
I've seen one of those windowless vans too that they shuttle people with.
oh yeah, those are weird. Like
Yeah.
the fact that it's all right there in front of plain sight makes you wonder. Like, hey, what's that airline? Can I get a one way ticket?
Well, I
Like
think that helps it blend in.
yeah, but it's a little bit weird because I remember walking by those guys. Like I legit walked by their freaking area on at the airport. I could see all of
Mhm.
these guys in business suits, and then the radio person would go over like, "All right, we may now start boarding to Janet Airlines," and then they say like something some. They just say we're now boarding Janet Airlines. They don't say like the exact location, which is really weird. Cause
Well, because everyone going on it knows. They know
yeah,
where they're going.
but it,
yeah,
it it's a little bit odd because when you hear, "Oh, we're departing from Sacramento to Hawaii," they say to Hawaii. They don't. It's weird that they don't
Yeah,
say to Area
they treat it
51.
like it's a private flight boarding
Yeah.
rather than that.
um, well, something that I can tie this whole conversation together is Jeremy Corbell actually directed a movie called um, Hunt for the
Hunt for the
Skinwalker,
Skinwalker. Yep,
right?
I've
Which
seen
I
it.
thought was a pretty boring movie that really didn't like. I don't know. Have you guys seen it?
I have
Yeah, I
not.
did.
I thought,
I
like, personally, I thought it was pretty boring and it didn't really offer anything new to the table. But
I agree. It was like that with this Bob Lazar movie too, where it was just stuff we've all heard before. At least if you're close to the case.
right, so why have they chosen him as the person who they're
Well,
leaking all this
well,
information
do you,
to?
do you know do you know his history? Like he was a news reporter for a station in Las Vegas where he was pretty popular. He would cover I think he had won a bunch of local awards, but he would start covering like weirder stuff. Like he would talk about Skinwalker Ranch or Bob Lazar. In fact, he
Maybe
did an interview with Bob Lazar years ago.
maybe that's why they chose him.
Yeah, because he had like established credibility.
Yeah, I think
I
that
Interesting.
think I think that's why.
I think if we
'Cause
do
I haven't
something,
dug into him a lot, but
yeah, if we do something like that and establish a credibility for Paranormal Awakening, we could do a lot more stuff. Like there's a third phase of Moon. They're pretty good. Like they have,
mm,
I mean, they do a little bit too much repetition, which is why for my show I want to cover everything. Like I want to cover
Well,
a ton. But
if there are any listeners right now who have evidence who are willing to become a whistleblower and leak some evidence of the paranormal, feel free to call my hotline at 916-534-8753.
yeah, don't be calling my cell phone. Yeah, I'm not leaking my cell phone. I'm good.
This isn't my cell phone, it's the secure scientific hotline of the unknown. So if there are any listeners, please do not hesitate to call.
Yeah, but I should mention as of right now, how is your research going in Yosemite? Have you heard of
It's good.
anything recently? Like, have you heard any weird noises or?
yeah, what are you researching in Yosemite, Sasquatch?
So, um, very recently, have you guys heard of the Awani Hotel in Yosemite Valley?
No.
I think I have actually because I think
It's a very, very old historical hotel.
is it
Many,
is it haunted?
unit, yeah, that's what I'm getting to. Many
I think
United
my
States
parents stayed
presidents
there.
have stayed there. Yeah, so
Oh,
I've
I
heard,
think I have heard of this place.
right, so, um, apparently I've heard from multiple people that it's extremely haunted, and every worker who has worked there for like a decent period of time has like at least one crazy story. So, I haven't investigated it yet, but I'm planning on doing it next week. Um, Also, I've heard stories about this strange cryptid called the Fresno Nightcrawler, and
Okay.
they were caught on a security camera inside Yosemite Park, and they're basically like uh, it's kind of hard to describe, but it's kind of like a white pair of pants with like a head on top of it, like walking. There's like a really big one and a small one.
Huh?
Is that thing
Um,
that was captured on video and people were saying it looked like a little white alien?
yep, that's it. It's also known as the
Okay, I
Fresno
understand that.
Alien.
That's
Yeah.
So
really
that's
weird.
also located in the park. Um, but yeah, I definitely have my work cut out for me. There's a lot of strange things that I can investigate.
Exciting.
Have you gone a chance to investigate Half Dome to see if there's anything kind of weird going on there? Or?
So I did check out Mirror Lake, which is a little lake right in front of Half Dome. I haven't climbed Half Dome yet, um, but I'm preparing to. I'm definitely planning on doing it. Um, Another
That's a
thing I
12-hour
did,
hike.
yeah, and this isn't necessarily a paranormal expedition, but a scientific expedition I did was 2 nights ago. I woke up at 1:30 and AM, and with a group of people, we went to the top of Sentinel Dome to watch the lunar eclipse.
Oh, that's cool.
How was it?
Yeah,
I
I
didn't even
saw a
know what's
lot of
going on.
yeah, I saw a lot of shooting stars. The eclipse was cool. I used my new telescope that I got, and it worked really well.
That's
Um,
awesome.
and yeah, I was keeping an eye out for UFOs, but didn't see any. But yeah,
Also,
Still cool that you got to do that.
yeah, that's so cool. So, for those of you that are listening to our podcast, make sure to check out Scientific Researchers of the Unknown. And Noah, do you have any social media platforms or that you really care
Not
about? Or
yet.
okay, okay,
for me, if you want to find anything that I'm doing, go to sro2.org. All my links are there. That's srotu.org.
And so, for those of you that are our viewers, we thank you so much for joining us on our podcast of Noah's girlfriend's encounter on a possible skinwalker. Maybe this will require an on-ground investigation in the future. Uh, who knows? Anyhow, to our listeners, thank you so much for your support. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share, and also check out Scientific Researchers of the Unknown. They are a great team, and so we hope to see you guys soon, and hope you all have a wonderful day. Alright, I'm going to go deafen and do the outro.
All right.